I just got a couple of questions. I know we're trying to get away from the kindergarten thing, but I just wanted to bring out before it's too late. Yes, I'm in favor of the half-day option too, because I think some people may not send their children if it's only a full-day option. That's one of the things. But are all our classrooms acceptable as far as the square footage for kindergarten classrooms?
They're going to have to be. I think because they're existing buildings, and we already have kindergarten in them, so.
If not, maybe the state has some money available for more kindergarten classrooms.
Nope.
I think that's long gone.
I know.
Yeah.
Part of the, why you would give it a year of planning, you know, which was our request in the first place.
Still get those things, but
Yeah.
I mean, we're using the classrooms for kindergarten anyway already, so.
Yeah, I know we have some that are definitely kindergarten classrooms.
Yeah, and then we have some that are just
Yeah.
regular classrooms that we're using.
So I will make sure that half-day kindergarten discussion is on the next agenda. Looking at the next group of policies, there's some pretty big changes in these. BEA is acceptable use of information and communication technologies, talking about the school board. This was reviewed by the tech department and the policy committee. A decision was made to eliminate the requirement that your personal computer need to be registered with the IT department, that you have to prove that you have antivirus and so forth, and that the board members sign an acceptable use policy. Since to log on to the network now, you have guest access, you have to sign that authorization anytime you access the network. For the email, when you sign up for your email account, you actually have to sign an acceptable use policy there. So the form in the policy was redundant. Since guest networks are now isolated in all the schools, there's no need for you to prove that you have antivirus or to register or put in with the technology department. It just creates an additional layer of complexity to their already very busy jobs. It's not required any longer. And those are the changes to that policy.
Does the guest network affect firewall screening of sites?
It has a firewall on it. It has to.
The guest network is the same network that students use and the public uses.
In terms of
network access. So students come in with their own laptop or their own iPad or whatever, and they are connecting to the same network that we use here as guests. So it is filtered and blocked and treated with the utmost security.
Okay.
And it's quarantined from the administrative network, completely separate, so that there is no possibility of hacking, if you will. The next policy is school board use of email. We added a section on communication with the public via the use of email, and I will read that. If a member of the public sends an email to all board members, the chair of the Newfound Area School Board shall respond to the sender by indicating receipt of the email and notifying the sender that the email should be included as correspondence during the next regularly scheduled school board meeting. The school board chair shall copy the superintendent in the reply to the sender. If a member of the public sends an email to a single board member on a subject that is relevant to the entire school board, that board member shall forward the email to the school board chair, who will respond to the sender by indicating receipt of the email and notification that the email should be included as correspondence during the next regularly scheduled school board meeting. The The school board chair shall copy the superintendent and reply to the sender. The purpose of this change in the policy is to provide for public information and answering of email as a board. We can't just respond to an email from somebody as school board members and without discussing it in a public meeting. This protects us and it protects the public and it gives them an expectation of what's going to happen. So that nobody sends an email to all the school board members expecting a response and then getting upset when they don't get one. The general public doesn't generally understand our requirements and our restrictions on how we behave as members of the board. And this would clarify that.
And that's the quorum issue.
Yeah, I think it was the quorum, but it was also the conversation around what happens when you get an email. What do you actually do with it, you know? Should one person respond, should the board chair respond? So this kind of set the process into play of, if you get an email, here's what, well, it will be correspondence, and then the board can address it at a meeting. Because I don't think anybody was really clear on what happens if the board gets an email, what do we do with it?
I think it's a right to know issue as well.
Yeah, so this helps clarify the kind of the process of the change. It also helps people if they send you an email that you can reference them to the policy of what the process is for it. So that, if you recall, we don't have somebody who says, well, I sent an email 3 weeks ago and never got a response. Now we know how to respond.
Jeff, I think this is an excellent improvement to the policy. I do have a bit of a concern though with paragraph 2. With the use of the word shall as opposed to may. Now, before I elaborate on that, it does say prior to that, on a subject that is relevant to the entire school board. So...
We did discuss this, and I know where you're going.
You did, okay.
Someone sending you personally an email because they know you're on the school board and they want to talk to you about it is different than someone sending you an email expecting you to respond as the school board.
Yeah, okay.
So as long as you're clear in your reply that you're responding for yourself and it's not for the board, then that's really not what we're talking about here. But if someone sends an email to every single member of the school board looking for answers, then they're really looking for an answer from the school board as opposed to an individual. But if someone's asking you, what do you think about half-day kindergarten? As long as you say, I think, and not the, you know, I'm not representing the board, you have every right to answer that email.
Yeah, I guess it sounds like you discussed that concern then, because it, you know, it kind of obligates you to send it. I think it discourages people from emailing you issues
Right.
that they may want to talk to you about or even discuss by email on a one-on-one basis, because this tells me I'm required to forward it to the rest of the board.
Yeah, well, but it's very clear to say it's relevant to the entire school board.
Yeah, and that's why I say it, I guess I could make the judgment that it's
Right.
not relevant to the entire school board, but I don't see how half-day kindergarten wouldn't be,
Well,
you know?
because you're entitled to have your personal opinion. And if you make sure that everybody knows in your answer that it's your personal opinion, and that you're not representing the board, I think that you're replying to that message is just fine.
I suppose, I mean, I just would prefer, instead of it say shall, that it says may. For that reason, because you don't want to discourage people from contacting, because then...
No, absolutely, I mean, we did discuss that, and keeping lines of communication open with the public is very important.
So I don't know, was there a question over use of the word shall versus may? Was there discussion?
I don't remember if we actually got into the shall versus may as much as we got into the, you know, I get an email from someone asking me about the bus, you know, going over North Groton Road. half empty. That's not really a question for the school board. If I can answer it and say, just say, this is what really happens there. But I think we've all gotten emails from people or questions from people that very clearly are issues that need to go before the whole board. And I mean, we all have to make that judgment every time we speak to someone. Is this a board issue? Or is this information or just someone venting their opinion?
Just my input on the policy, I think it's a good enhancement.
Anybody else? Okay.
Well, I'm looking at this again, and I understand what you're saying. Almost anything that they're going to ask a school board member is going to be relevant to the school board.
It could be, yeah, I mean, that's a judgment thing that you have to come up with.
I think it
Why don't we look at the next meeting, maybe we can take a look at changing that wording a little bit before we bring it back to the second reading. So kind of make that a little clearer.
Is it relevant if they're, asking the individual about a position versus relevant that they may be wondering how the school board would view this?
Right. And that's where I think the individual member has to really think about what is the question? And is this something that the board should have a discussion and respond to? Or is it just a quick, like you said,
Maybe we should look at that
the bus
again.
was late 5 minutes, okay, I'll call the superintendent, let her know,
Maybe we should
versus.
look at that again and maybe use the word judgment in there somewhere.
Right,
I think it's a good idea to reconsider that, given our
Yeah.
discussion, but only from the point of view of, we can really only act as a board.
Right.
And I would be hard pressed to defend myself with this board on an issue that someone brought to my attention that I said, in my opinion, is not relevant to the whole board. I can't think of anything that would be. That's why I'm concerned. Because we can only act officially.
Right, and then that's the purpose for the change to the policy.
Which would, I guess, be more reason why it should be shall, because if it is only relevant to the entire board, then everything, any email correspondence should come to the board.
Yeah, see, I still think that we need to keep people's individual rights intact.
That's the challenge.
We'll look at it again, I think that's reasonable. We're on the right track, and maybe we just need to tweak it a little bit.
Dan has a comment.
It sounds like what the difference is if the email is asking for a board action, then it should go to the board chair. But if it's just asking, expressing an opinion or sharing something, that they're not asking for an action, an investigation, a filing, a complaint, anything like that, then that would be the individual board member's choice to just respond back. That seems to be the crux of the difference.
That's a pretty good measure there. DN is equipment and supplies sales and school properties disposal.
You forgot something.
What did I forget? Oh. The coffee pot dilemma. Do we throw it out or do we have to bring it in?
This came out because of a real incident. And I'll let Stacy tell the story because it's a good one.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, the conversation started, so as you know, we bring things to you to dispose of, and sometimes it gets a little crazy, like a mouse. Like, we should just be able to throw a mouse away when it dies. And so the joke was that at the SAU office, we had a broken coffee pot in the closet. And we were cleaning downstairs, and I was like, well, just throw it away. And they were like, we can't, we have to bring it to the board for approval. And I was like, just throw it. It was like a 10-year-old coffee pot. I'm like, please just throw it away. So this will help us not have to bring, it will help us move the process a little quicker and not have to, so we have a lot of stuff that sits around because it's time consuming to count the 17 mouse pads that we want to throw away, or the 47 keyboards that we're no longer using because they have died, So this will just allow us a little more flexibility at the SAU to get rid of or sell off things that we think really have kind of virtually no value. We'll still bring things like our laptops and stuff to the board that have value and let you know that we want to sell them or do whatever with them, but I think it gives us a little more flexibility to just get rid of junk without having to put it on a list and bring it to you.
And the dollar amounts are listed there. Original purchase price under $200 or a current estimated value of $100 can be disposed of by approval of the business administrator, who happens to make decisions that involve much, much larger sums of money, and I think is fully qualified to make those decisions, rather than bringing every single one of those to the superintendent of the school board.
Okay. How does this verbiage address the fact that, to use the superintendent's example, of 47 keyboards, each of which are, $10 a piece. Just the other end of that is 470 keyboards at $10 a piece. It's still $4,700 because the old IBM click key keyboards now, I think they're about $100 on eBay, right?
If they're any good.
Yeah.
If they're not any good, they're 19 cents a pound to dispose of.
Well, my question with the wording is individual items of value, but in aggregate is the question I'm asking.
That's pretty hypothetical, because you could in aggregate just about anything.
Right.
So if you were to say, well, are they in aggregate of like items, so they all have to be keyboards? Do they have to be the same brand? I mean, it gets a little ridiculous.
I guess
I'm talking
this is,
about quantity.
yeah, I guess this is allowing us to use our judgment, like that if it's a keyboard, even if you had 450 of them, the value of them is so, you know what I mean? It gives us some flexibility to not have to, I mean, honestly, we have piles of stuff because the time it takes to inventory them all to bring that is just not worth our time.
I'll be honest, we're gonna err to the side of, and this is what I tell employees too, I'm like, if you think someone would, if you were walking to throw that away, and you thought, I hope no one sees me, thinks that I might be bringing this home, then that is something that should go on surplus, period. So I wouldn't even go with just a number. I would go with, is this something that, if someone saw you taking it out, be like, oh, that must be a perk of their job. I'm like, then that goes on surplus. A thing like a coffee pot, which quite honestly probably is something that one of us brought in. I'm not putting that in surplus just because we don't know who brought it in. And like, well, let's just be careful, even though the thing doesn't work, because its aggregate value is actually 0. So it's really, we're gonna err on the side of, if it might have a wrong connotation, even if probably that depreciated value is 10 cents, we're gonna put it on a surplus list.
And I take you at your word on that, because you and I have had similar discussions about what's appropriate.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
And this is directing it to approval of the business administrator. It's not like a teacher can throw something away.
The but part I was going to say was, though, but that's not what the policy says.
Well, that is what it says.
Has to be approved by the business administrator.
Items with a current estimated value of under $100 may be disposed of with the approval of the business administrator.
Well, I'm just questioning the aggregate situation. So,
Even in an aggregate situation, we trust the business administrator to transact business for the school district with much larger sums of money involved. I don't think we need to worry about even 450 keyboards.
Do you have a problem with the number being 100? I mean, personally, I don't even look at that as really a guideline for me. It comes back down to the philosophy of it. $100 item, if it still has a value of $100, and we're not making any money off of that, I would have a problem with letting that ever go. Like even a $50 item.
no, my point
still
my
has
point
a
isn't
value
the
of
$100.
Yeah.
It's the 15 or 20 or 47 that are 100 in aggregate, that's all. The policy doesn't cover that.
I think I need to point out that the only way you're going to accumulate like items that amount is if you're taking them out of service. In which case, I would assume that they would be determined to have a residual value. broken keyboards are gonna appear 1 and 2 at a time. You know, broken items don't turn up in large quantities.
I know, Jeff,
So-
but that's not my example. My example
No, but
is
so you're
an
talking, but
aggregate.
you're talking about aggregate. So you take 50 computers out of service. Well, now they've got a keyboard and a mouse and all that, they were still working. Most reasonable people would determine that they have a value and they need to be surplus. I don't think that we'd get into a situation where we would have an aggregate of anything that didn't have a value. I think that it's the right thing to do to say to the business administrator, take care of it, have it.
And that's really what
I
this
mean,
does.
Vinnie, if it comes down to it, if it has an aggregate value, it would have an individual value as well. That's why when it comes down, I mean, so one time I didn't have to list that keyboard in surplus because I only had 2 of them, that's not aggregate enough. But then the next round of a board meeting, I have 40, that now takes it to another aggregate level.
Well,
That's
that's,
too hypothetical.
that's what I'm suggesting, is that's how I'm reading this. It says items with a current estimated value of under $100. Well,
So that's why it's like, it makes
It's
more
one
sense to
item.
look at it as an individual item, because if
that's
it
what
has
I'm saying,
value.
that's how I'm reading it.
So, which is why I proposed the question, is $100 too high of a value? Because if you want to look at it in I mean, it doesn't matter to us. Like, you can make that $10, you can make it $5. I'm saying, what would you be more comfortable with to
Well,
allow
I think the
that
committee was
policy?
comfortable with $100.
Well, yeah, I know, so.
So, because I think, again, it doesn't mean we're throwing them away. We may sell them, we may recycle them. We can still do whatever, but it just eliminates the need to keep coming back to the board with small items that we can just, we don't have to wait till the next month to get rid of the 10 keyboards that we have sitting there.
If they're 10 keyboards and they don't work, they have an aggregate value of 0.
Zero.
right?
This is true. I think that's why we get back to a
So-
dollar amount.
I think the policy clearly states one item that's $100, not an aggregate.
And
Well, right.
And that's,
I would agree.
that's my question, that's how, I guess that's how I'm reading it. So that if you have multiple items that are each $100, that now pretty soon you're talking real money, 47 times 100 is $4,700. I'm just suggesting that, I understand the intent behind it. I don't know, I would defer to Sue, she's been here longer than me, but this has always been the way we've done it, and far be it for me to say, so let's continue with it for that reason, believe me. But,
Yeah, I mean, what was the circumstance that may have, the board may have, when this policy first came out, to consider not having it on a list of surplus and abuse? I guess that's what it comes down to, because I haven't seen policies like this very often, and usually they are spawned by some kind of abuse, where they're like, people are walking out of buildings with a computer, or like, it's just randomly, maybe there's a favoritism for how the stuff gets handed
yeah,
out.
that's why I'm asking for Susan.
Okay.
because I don't
Well,
know.
we didn't always have this policy, but I think one of our business managers said, gee, we should have this policy. We're supposed to have this policy, we should have this policy. So we had it. I don't think it stemmed from any abuse. I think that we had the policy all of a sudden. And there were all these things listed on it because we were accumulating a lot of things in storage over at the middle school and probably other places here too. So how do we get rid of all that? Well, we put out a list. If anybody's interested, they let me know.
I can,
But I mean, if you have a $25 item and it works, well, I guess what we're doing is we're giving you the discretion to decide what to do with those
For the
items.
small items.
Yeah, those small items.
And you're also saying, if it is over that dollar amount, it has to be, there is no
There's no
discretion to
discretion.
it.
well, I'm just taking advantage of the fact, Mr. Chairman, that this is the time to discuss this because it's in its first reading.
Right.
This is when the board gets to comment on it, so.
I mean, taken to the extreme, the way the policy existed previously, coffee grounds, after brewing, have a saleable value in quantity.
Pencil,
Yes.
paper.
So do we save up our used coffee grounds?
We should.
And then, and then have a board meeting on how to dispose of them?
That's right.
I mean, that's,
I'm not disputing that, I'm
Yeah.
just suggesting that the way this is worded can be interpreted differently when there is an aggregate set of things that are worth more than $100. Just trying to be fiscally prudent with the public's finances. Like all of us intend to be.
well, it's a pleasure. Do we want to send it back, or do we want to,
I wonder if, and I know it says it, but I wonder if there's not maybe clarification to may be disposed of with the approval of the business administrator, if it isn't just again, for sake of it being there, referenced, you know, by means of, however it gets worded, but by, you know, the means described below, all, you know, so in the paragraph above it says all materials will be disposed of utilizing the process outlined below. If something that's similar to that wasn't included in that paragraph.
so what if we put the word individual before items when it's listed twice?
Sounds like you're getting
Individuals.
Individual items, so it would say individual items with an original purchase price under 200, and then the next would say individual items with a current estimated value under 200.
100.
I mean, 100, yes, sorry. Bifocals.
And I think maybe it's Ben's suggestion to add disposal shall be done utilizing the process outlined below.
And should it be written approval versus verbal approval?
I would like to just kind of stick with verbal or written. Again, because now you're just creating more, you know, all we're doing then is just creating a list of things that go to, I mean, certainly somebody can call Mike and say, I have 2 broken keyboards, is it okay if I toss them?
I think your suggestion has merit, just for further clarification.
So,
To add individuals.
so if we put individual in there twice, would it be acceptable for everybody to approve, include it for first reading?
That's fine with me.
Okay, so we'll put individual items in there. And we'll keep that in the group. Field trips and excursions. Pursuant to the board meeting discussion, this policy's been modified to have chaperones in attendance. And that we will not encourage the use of employee transportation. It also eliminates the should and changes it to may.
I had a question under the section where it says employee transportation for field trips should be limited and not encouraged, and then it goes into this kind of bulleted section.
Yeah, it's adding the bullets.
So,
So just, the language was there, I just added the dots.
that's in reference to utilizing private vehicles, or this is just in reference to,
Yeah, you're right, it's a little, when you look at it, it's a little out of place.
so
Formatting issue.
that's weird
Yeah, so-
formatting wise, but I guess my question was, and I just wanted to make sure I was asking it kind of appropriately, double use of the word. So when appropriate a first aid kit or a qualified first aid person should be present, when is it not, or when is it appropriate?
It's always appropriate, that requires somebody, I think the law actually requires somebody who's first aid trained to be on the field trip.
I think when appropriate, that's to determine a first aid kit or a qualified first aid person. I would assume that a qualified first aid person is going to be equipped with a first aid kit. And you wouldn't just take them and not the kit.
I actually think these probably should be not indented as if they're underneath that, but to
Yeah.
the left with just bullets. Kind of like where it has like A, B, C, D. Like, I think it shouldn't be indented, I think it should be to the left.
Did we talk about, and I think we did, but I don't remember how the conversation ended up, about with the chaperones being, if it's a co-ed field trip, male versus female, trying to have a, did we talk about that?
I think we
Yeah.
talked about it, I think we were struggling because what if we don't have
Yeah.
a male and a female, but the goal of it was not, I mean, we talked about the notion that we don't allow, we would never have really a male walk into a female's hotel room at night, you know what I mean? But that it was more around making sure we had somebody, should somebody get sick or something happen. I believe that was the conversation we had.
Yeah, and certainly we could come back to this policy some other time and visit that, but the biggest concern was that we need to have at least 2 chaperones on field trips.
If there were 2 male chaperones and there were females on the trip, I would assume both chaperones would only,
Right, they would
Go
go
in
together,
at the
or, I
same
mean,
time.
oftentimes if you're at a conference, there's other female chaperones that you could get to help you, you know what I mean? There's lots of support at those kind of events. They're very rarely left to their own devices.
One more quick. So EEBB, that probably further outlines any requirements as far as employees are permitted to use their private vehicles for field
Yeah.
trips.
Yeah, it spells out
Yeah, it
insurance
spells out what's
requirements.
required.
That's
Yeah.
what that
Yeah.
is. I guess just to go back to it quickly, the formatting is the formatting, you can change it, great, it would make more sense, but I think the when appropriate section really doesn't clarify to me anything, and only makes it vague. It just seems like if there should be a first aid kit or a qualified first aid person, it's always appropriate, and therefore it doesn't really use it.
So I guess then the best way to change this would be to put a first aid kit,
Or,
or, when appropriate, a qualified first aid person.
Yeah, that's it, that seems to me to make,
I think that is what the intent of that line is, and by changing the order, it makes a little more sense.
I would like that better, yeah.
so the minimum of first aid kits appropriate then.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
So we should include that with the changes, move the bullet, swap the words, and we'll bring it back for a second reading. Okay.
so I just wanted for clarification, we're gonna move BEA, DN, and IICA as a first read. And BE is gonna go back to policy.
DN as amended.
Yep, and
Also,
IICA as amended.
IICA.
Yes, that's,
Just wanna make sure.
policy committee took an extended amount of time, and we went through the support staff and specialist handbooks. A lot of the changes between them are the same. There are some differences between them, however. Everyone's had enough time to go through these. The significant changes are day changes and outlining health insurance. Some certification language as far as what's required and by who and what. Clarification on how sick leave will be used. Some policies that we no longer have are removed from reference. Some changes to inclement weather policy. And that's pretty much it. The attachments are not the ones that are going to be included. They're from this year, and there are examples of what will be included. Obviously, the school year calendar will change. The timesheet probably will not. Sue?
On the, which one is it? Program specialist, page 8, it looks like there's some bullet problems. It's just something needs to be shifted around there, I think.
It's just spacing, yeah. And once we accept the changes, the whole document will get re-spaced because then we'll subtract or add spaces, so we'll make it look nice.
There's a red, so.
Yeah, I think it's just, there's 2 extra dots in it.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what, I think when I moved the C policy to JO, and I think it must have added in a dot.
Yeah.
I noticed the complete policy list here is here now. Did anybody go through the list and,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
correct.
yeah, because you see the mileage form kind of, so it's how they're pasted into the document, so
Right.
everything will be aligned, obviously, as we go and print them out.
Any more discussion? So we can move those to the consent agenda? Okay, is there any public comment on agenda items only?
Jeff, my agenda that I added, financial report.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Go ahead, Len.
I just wanted to make everybody aware that the auditors have finally submitted their financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014. And they only had one major finding, and that was with post-employment benefits other than pensions and governmental activities. And Mike did a good job describing that in here, but basically it's for retirees that continue with our health coverage. It affects the current employees' benefits, costs. And they're saying we need to recognize that potential liability. My example for the federal, from a federal perspective, which probably doesn't totally apply, is Social Security has a huge unfunded liability, and they're paying their benefits out of current payments, taxes being paid by workers. And in our case, each year, you know, we budgeted for our health insurance, which is adjusted based on the past experience of our retirees that are currently in the health plan. So that's why I don't think we should bother spending the money to do an actuarial study as to the potential liability that we might have. Then on page 48, Mike had identified that the student activity funds within the schools weren't being handled appropriately, and that's recognized, and Mike has his solution in there. And then there was also proposed activity fund restructuring back in that section with Mike's solution. And then the last one was maintaining an inventory, and Mike's come up with a solution for that as well. The report is on our website, so if you want to look at the different sections, you can go on site, or there's a few copies that the auditors have provided that Mike has in his office. That's it. Want to add, Mike?
No, pretty good. We, those two items were something we discussed at length with the auditors. Some of you, you know, it's really, one of them was having, and this is something the public should know too, because it's not us being mean to PTOs or anything like that. It's holding money for outside organizations. You can't do it. And some of the names of the PTOs were kind of embedded in with other student activities, but really what we're doing is we're holding money for an outside organization. Similarly, booster clubs have tried to do this, so it's not a good business practice. It actually, it's not even a valid or legal business practice, but it's not uncommon. This happens at a lot of school districts, and people are like, well, why at so many school districts do they have these problems? Because no one has attacked it. And it's usually not looked at until someone steals a significant amount of money from one of them. So this will help our business practices and also clarify how to use these funds for our employees. So they'll be part of the normal purchasing process.
Yes.
A question for Dawn. Was there any mention in there by the auditors of our continuing and ongoing practice of approving manifests in a post facto manner? And their objection to it or not?
I got into that, I know.
Questions I asked Mike. They had raised that issue that because of the volume of transactions, the school board theoretically has to approve the transactions before they're paid. And
Legally,
yeah,
not theoretically.
and
But we
yeah, there's no way that with the volume we have that we can accomplish that. So last year they did raise that as an issue that we were approving them after the fact. You know, Sue and Jeff have been really diligent about going in and reviewing those payments to ensure that they are appropriate after the fact.
Nobody'd ever get paid if they had to wait for us every day. All the checks would be paid.
And payroll, I'm sure the teachers would be pretty upset.
Anything else? Okay, now we'll come back to public comment. Yes.
Hello, I'm Susan Orlowski. I'm from Bristol. I have a general comment relating to your email and communications. I would just like to say I've been on the school board, the SAU websites, the various Newfound area school district websites, and I've read that you guys are here at least once a month, if not twice, and I first want to say thank you for your commitment to our children and to the residents of this area. But in regards to the email and communication, Mr. Levesque, you made a comment earlier when you were discussing that as a board with the general public really doesn't have a, and I'm going to paraphrase, idea what we're doing here or how this works. And I would like to expound on that for just a moment. As a resident who has been on the website and been unable to find some of what I'm looking for, I'd like to comment with a few questions. When is it appropriate for a resident of the district to propose a question, a concern, or an item to either an individual or to the board? And what is the modus operandi once a resident makes contact with you, either via email, telephone, mail, or as the gentleman earlier here tonight did? If you would consider posting a paragraph or some sort of an explanation how that works, I think as a resident, you may see more involvement from the residents. That would probably feel pretty good to have more people attending your meetings and show their support of all that you're doing here. This is my first school board meeting. I'm very happy to be here. I'm witnessing how carefully you discuss things, and I would appreciate if you would consider putting something on the website that explains how all of that works when a resident wants to make contact on an item. Thank you.
Since we've just recently revised the website and done such great work on it,
Hopefully it's easier to find things.
hopefully it will become even easier in the future. We need to be constantly vigilant about that and take a look at that. Anybody else? Yes.
Jeff, Fred Robinson from Danbury. You've been discussing your field trip policy, excuse me. And I guess, like I said, I had mentioned before, I spent 25 years as a scout leader. And many of these issues have come up in scouting as far as, being on trips, adults and kids. I just would like to, maybe if you can, respond to me when there is a field trip and there are adults that go along with it, an overnight field trip. Are those adults housed separately from the kids? Because scouting has a rule that the only adult that's allowed to sleep in the same room or tent or lodge with another student or another scout is the parent of that scout. So, I just didn't know whether, and that, I guess has to do with the fact of, the possibility of some sort of abuse. If, I don't know, whether we have it so that the staff is getting separate accommodations from the students when they are there. I know it would be an additional cost, and especially if you have a female student or a staff and a male student together, or staff together. So, I just didn't know if that was anything that has come up in your policy discussions towards this. So, since you are going to be discussing it again, I didn't know whether it would be something that might come up. So, what the rules are for that, what the laws are. So, thank you.
Thank you for your input. Anybody else? Okay. Anybody on the board have anything? Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I don't believe we have any individual items.
I think everything I put there.
Okay. Sue, where are we on manifest?
I was going to ask you that. I think, have you been in?
I have been in.
You have been in, so we should be done with January.
So I'm current as of last week.
So I haven't been in since you, so it's January.
So,
I would
alright.
move to approve the manifest for the month of January 2015.
And I will second that. Sure.
Is there a way, and this, I don't think there is, but is there a way of making this process a little easier for other people to be able to help out and sign instead of you guys always seem to be the ones?
Well, you're more than welcome to go in anytime.
I understand that, but
The office isn't open.
I work the same hours and further away, so I'm just trying to
Okay.
figure out, is there something else? I don't know.
No, we can, we'd have to look
I
at
mean,
that.
it's the manifest, I
Yeah,
would be hard pressed to say
Everything
it's
is hard
leaving the
copy.
office,
Yeah.
it's all hard copies, and it's thick, I mean, there's
Yeah.
days that it's this
Yeah.
thick, you know?
So,
I would, if they were having a meeting at the SAU office at any time.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a
Then you could
subcommittee
go in.
meeting, we're open.
You might want to check on that, talk with Sue over there and get the schedule of when there might be evening meetings.
Yeah, like anytime there's a committee meeting, anybody, you can come in and review them while the meeting's happening.
Because it is interesting to see what we're spending our money on. I was surprised about how much we pay to transport special ed students.
It's always a sticker shock.
definitely an eye opener.
I pass a lot of buses.
It's not the buses, the eye opener, it's the special ed costs and that transportation. Anyway, if there's nothing else,
So I think you need to vote on the manifest.
yeah, I was just gonna say, if there's nothing else, discussion on the manifest, all those in favor of approving the manifest through January, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Reluctant.
Wait for it?
Any other business? Okay, at this time, I would like to take a voice, motion and a vote. Look at that.
If you would like, I offer this form that comes from the New Hampshire School Board Association that has created it. I used to find it extremely helpful from music.
Yes, I have.
There's two here. One should be your master, and one could be used for tonight. It's pretty simple to just follow.
Thank you very much.
I think we're under 91A, 3C.
And A, we're going into two regions.
And my question is, do we take the motion before the roll, or roll before the motion?
The roll is for the motion to go into non-public.
Yeah.
All right. So,
So somebody should make a motion to go into non-public, and then you can take the roll to go in. Does that make sense?
that was what I was trying to get at, is which comes first, the chicken or
The
the egg?
motion.
Al, did you move?
I move to go into non-public?
Second.
Okay. Alexandria,
Yes.
Bridgewater,
Yes.
Bristol,
Yes.
Danbury is not present. Groton, yes. Hebron,
Yes.
New Hampton,
Yes.